Hey everyone and welcome to another video. Today I wanted to review Star Wars Squadrons because I've not really talked about it much, especially not put any content on the channel, and I wanted you guys to kind of know why. The game is great, the game is fun, but I don't feel a draw back to it as I did with other Star Wars games, you know, like Battlefront or Fallen Order, and I want to kind of talk about that. So today's video is a review of Star Wars Squadrons, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So I want to kind of take a moment and split this review into two different parts. I want to talk about the story of the game, and then I want to talk about the content of the game. Let's start with story. The game's story is actually, I think it's selling point, for me at least, in that the story is condensed enough to where anyone can kind of enjoy it quite quickly, quite easily, and without much hassle. And they don't need to know why to Star Wars, but it also has those referential points that you know from Star Wars, that you expect, those little Easter eggs and those little fun tidbits. And I love that. I love the fact that you can go in and find, for example, in the game they talk about Irika Quell, and a lot of people don't know necessarily who Irika Quell is, but if you were to look it up, you would find that she's in the Alphabet Squadron books that have come out recently, over the past 2 years. And that to me was like, oh wow, they're referencing this character that I know. Obviously that's not going to be the same for everyone, but that was a big selling point for me. I was really invested as soon as I knew that these characters knew a character that I also knew, if that makes sense. What I found to be an issue though is that some of the characters felt one-dimensional, and I'll kind of explain this. The Rebel characters were great. I loved their diversity in terms of having alien species, in terms of having the ability to change what your character looks like. I think that's great. Obviously that applies to Imperials too, but in terms of the Rebels, they have a little bit more customization that way. And that's representative of what the Rebels are like. But what it means is that the Rebels have a much more enjoyable experience on their missions because you have a wider array of characters. For example, Keo, the Mirialan, you can tell that she has this connection to the Force. It's not explicit, but you can tell she has it. And the way they use it as a story hook is just ever so subtle, but it adds that character. It adds a little bit of flavour to this squadron. And then you kind of go Imperial side, and I get that the Empire's regimented. I get that the Empire is, you know, all about order, and you know, there's mysterious characters like Shen. He's a little bit more mysterious. He's a little bit more intriguing than perhaps some of the others. But you kind of get the very stereotypical Imperial experience, and that was kind of disappointing to me. I mean, the thing is, we've all been yearning for a really strong Imperial story in a game. Battlefront 2 didn't deliver that. Battlefront 2's campaign, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed, but it was not an Imperial story. It was an Imperial who defects, which we've seen before. We know that story inside out. And so I was kind of hoping we'd get something a little bit more along those lines. Don't get me wrong, I know we had a defection in this game still, but it was different. It was part of the story and part of our reason for fighting with the Empire still, to bring justice to Lyndon. And I liked that. That was fun. That was different. But I just feel like the Empire could have been pushed that bit further to make it even more enjoyable for the player. Honourable mentions, I think they did really well on the second-in-commands for each of the sides. The Imperial Intelligence guy, I forget his name off the top of my head, LT something or other, and Arlo, is Arlo? I want to say Arlo, but I'm probably wrong. The Mon Calamari, they were great. And also, really big fan of Hera. I mean, I'm a big fan of Hera in most media, but like, they did her really well in the game and didn't make her look funny, even though they did a realistic version of her. And I love that. I'm happy with that as well. So yeah, the story, I think, was really well paced. It gave you a real feeling of being part of a squad, and it allowed characters to kind of have their space to breathe. But I feel like it was kind of one-dimensional in parts. I mean, that's to be expected in a game that isn't centered around story. This is obviously very much a multiplayer game. And for what we got, I think that's pretty good. I think, you know, we can't expect a masterpiece for a game that is essentially meant to be a multiplayer game. So yeah, I'm kind of happy with the story. There was room for improvement, but that's the same with any story. I think the one thing that I would like to see is more story added in the future. I don't know whether that's going to happen, but I just think it would add to the fantasy of this kind of game. And I'm hoping they're going to do that. Whether or not they do, obviously, we can't say right now. But as I was saying, the multiplayer is the main part of this game. And so I kind of want to move to that now. My issue with this game mainly resides in the multiplayer. And you guys will probably see that going through this video, I actually haven't picked up the game all that much since playing the campaign. I've kind of not really leveled. You'll see that I'm still kind of early on in terms of learning the controls or perhaps learning maps, etc. I know all these maps are in the campaign, but you know, learning them in a multiplayer environment is very different. But what I found was that I didn't enjoy the multiplayer as much as the single player, because I felt like the single player had done such a good job at setting up this kind of Squadron-esque feel that when you're in a lobby alone, and obviously in my case I am a minority probably in terms of playing alone in this game, but when you're playing alone you feel lonely again. Like, you don't get that feeling of like, oh wow, you know, I'm part of a team, we're doing this together. I mean, you do at points, but I don't think as much. And that was an issue for me, because this game is very much about being part of a team and being part of a squadron. I mean, that's the whole point of the game. It's in the title. So that was a disappointment to me. What I also found to be a disappointment is that the maps, I think there should have been some maps that weren't in the campaign to allow for a reason to jump into multiplayer a little bit more, to see these other maps, to encounter these other places, and to kind of enjoy the breadth of Star Wars. I mean, the thing is as well is that a lot of these maps are places that we kind of referentially know or tangentially know. Yavin, for example, is not Yavin 4, it's the Yavin gas planet. And so you have, you know, kind of small links, but not the full thing. And it feels kind of almost half done to me in terms of the world building of this game, if that makes sense. Not in terms of the mechanics of the game or the looks of the game or anything like that. Those are great. There's very few bugs as well, I have to say. But it just feels like there's something kind of, there's a slight hollowness, just slightly, but I feel like it's there. And so that's why I feel like I've not been compelled to play this as much as perhaps Battlefront or like Fallen Order, like I say. What I do think, though, is that this game captures the fantasy of every single ship that it has to a T. And you can feel like you're actually in that ship when you're in it. And that is something that is just amazing. Like, you know, these ships some of these ships we've never actually been able to pilot before. Especially like the U-Wing and the TIE Reaper. So to be able to play these ships and be like, yes, I know that's exactly how that would fly. That's crazy, like, for these developers to be able to do that. So I kind of commend them on that, for being able to bring us the fantasy of ships that we haven't even flown in the game before. The one thing I will say counter to that is, this game was set up to be 5v5. And I've had an issue with this for a while, in that, why only put 4 ships in the game? I understand that, you know, at any point you can double up, you can have, or triple up, or quadruple up, you can have 5 TIE fighters, you can have 5 bombers, you can have this, that, and the other. I get it. That's not the point. What my point is, why not allow for a situation where you could have the 5 ships? It's not hard. There are other ships in the Star Wars universe that fit the Empire Rebel theme. The B-Wing, which I think is a big miss. That would have been a brilliant ship to try and incorporate into a game like this, especially for VR. And the TIE Defender. And I just think those two would have added another dimension, another way of playability, another, you know, role to fill. And I hope they do that in the future. I hope they add more ships. But right now it feels kind of weird. It feels like the game was half thought out. 5 people, but 4 ships. To me, that just doesn't make sense. Maybe I'm being critical about the game, and I get if you guys agree with that. I like it. I'm not saying I don't like it, but I think there's room for improvement, and I'm hoping that that's going to happen. I mean, the thing is, the game has done well. That's what we know for sure. Like I said, there's no actual really big glaring issues with the game. I just feel like it's missing something for me. That's not saying that you guys can't enjoy it, and that's not saying that it's not a successful game, because I do think it is a successful game. I do think it will be a successful game for a long time to come. I'm just concerned about how fun it's going to be for me in, say, 3 months' time, 4 months' time, 5 months' time. And so that's where I'm kind of coming from with this review. If you guys, have different opinions, please leave it in the comments. Please, discuss this. I'm excited to see you guys' opinions too. But yeah, guys, I think we're going to leave it there. If you enjoyed this video, please share, like, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell and check the description for my Twitter and my Twitch. I stream 3 nights a week on Twitch, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 PM BST. And I hope you guys will join us. We always have a laugh, and I would love to see you guys there. As another note, I do have a Patreon and a Discord that I'll also link in the description if you want to support me and the channel. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.